The Minnesota Vikings travel to Lambeau Field to face their NFC North division rival Green Bay Packers in the wild card round of the playoffs on Saturday night. Packers are currently installed as a 9.5-point favorite on BETDAQ. 46 is the total in this game. Now, the Packers would have their feet propped up on the couch watching football this week if they'd only been able to beat Minnesota last week. These two teams met last week in Minnesota. Everything was on the line for the Vikings. They had to win the game to make the playoffs. The Packers needed the win to secure a first-round bye. Minnesota came out with a 37-34 win. It was a great game, back and forth in the second half. So here we go again. As we said, the Packers a big favorite in this game, despite the fact they lost to Minnesota last week. And just a month ago, these two teams played in Green Bay, and that game was close throughout. Packers pulling out a 23-14 win in the end. So bettors apparently still have, or at least odds makers, still have faith that the Green Bay Packers are going to be able to win this game comfortably, despite maybe recent evidence to the contrary. I say odds makers and not bettors because the public has been on Minnesota in this game out in Las Vegas. Too many points, I think, is a general consensus. And to be honest with you, when I first looked at this game, I agreed with that line of thought. But the more I've looked at this game, the more I've thought about it, the more I'm looking at the Green Bay Packers side here. Listen, I would be stunned, and I will be stunned if the Minnesota Vikings and Christian Ponder are able to go on the road at Lambeau Field and actually beat the Packers. Now, I don't like laying 9.5 points in a playoff game any more than anybody else. And hey, I've been saying all year that Green Bay is not the same team this year, and I've been just about alone among people saying that, and they might make me look bad by going on to win the Super Bowl or something. But, you know, the Packers, before they lost to the Vikings last week, they went on a great stretch. They won 9 out of 10 games. But I haven't been sold on the team all year simply because they haven't been nearly as good on offense as they were the last couple of years. I mean, Green Bay was dominant on offense in 2011 and 2010, but this season they just weren't. Now, the offense did pick it up at the end of the year. 2 out of their 3 highest scoring games were their last 2 games when they scored 34 against Minnesota last week and 55 against the Tennessee Titans the week before. But those are the only 3 games scoring over 31 this year, and last year they averaged 35 per game. So Green Bay offense clearly hasn't been the same. They've struggled on the offensive line, and Minnesota has been playing great defense over the second half of the season. All that being said, I mean, listen, I know I'm not a, you know, some people talk about Green Bay like they're still the same old elite team. I'm not one of those people, and I recognize the Vikings have been playing good defense. I recognize that Adrian Peterson, the best running back in the game, teams have not been able to stop him even when they've known he's coming, like last week when he lit up the Green Bay Packers. I mean, fell only 9 yards short of breaking Eric Dickerson's record, rushed for, I believe, 199 yards on this Green Bay defense, and they knew he was coming. So I know all those things. I understand the Minnesota angle here. I just don't necessarily like it. Christian Ponder, even though he had one of his best games of the season last week, I do not trust this guy. I think he's among the worst starting quarterbacks in the NFL. Minnesota was 31st in the NFL in pass yards per game this year, and Ponder has turnover problems from time to time. Green Bay is as healthy as they've been in some time. Randall Cobb expecting to play in this game, their leading wide receiver. Jordy Nelson also back healthier. Charles Woodson expected to go in this game. Woodson, one of their defensive captains, of course. They've moved him to safety now. He's been out for most of the season with a broken collarbone. So Green Bay is getting healthy. Christian Ponder on the road in Lambeau Field. Sub-freezing temperatures. The early weather forecast here, high of 28 degrees on Saturday with, fortunately for the Vikings, so far the forecast is for dry, or I say fortunately for the Vikings, I probably say that wrong. I actually think it would be advantage Minnesota if the forecast here turns into snow or freezing rain or even high winds, because the Vikings like to run the ball. Green Bay is a pass-first team, so I misspoke there. If the weather turns here, and keep an eye on the weather forecast over the next 24 hours, we know it can change quickly, that part of the country this time of year. And if the weather turns here, it might be advantage Vikings. As a matter of fact, if we find out it's going to be really nasty, either rain, wind, or snow, and none of that is projected now. Sitting here 48 hours out, they're projecting a high of 28 degrees, dry and calm. But if that changes, I would be more inclined to take the points and would be more inclined to lean towards the under. As of now, I'd be stunned if Green Bay loses this game, and I think they're probably going to cover the 9.5.